Hello, I'm Bill Tuberville. I moved to the village about 5 years ago with my wife, Susan Stalgatis. Soon after we moved here, I learned Dennis Sabo lives in the village. We knew his work from the galleries in Knoxville, and I was pretty excited when I learned he was offering photography classes. And I jumped at the chance to work with him. I've gone through 4 or 5 cameras since working with Dennis. I like experimenting with different gear, different lens, figuring out my style, what I wanted to photograph. I would describe myself as a travel photographer, mostly. What I like to shoot, I find on the streets, especially in foreign countries. Animals come in second, but I'm not really a nature photographer. I don't have the patience to wait. I just try to get a good shot before they disappear. Architecture, in the form of historic buildings and modern geometric structures. It's a lot of fun to play with. I'm usually not up and out early enough to get good landscape photography done, but when the light's right, that's a fun thing to do too. I'm going to start with this shot from Toulouse, France. This was back when I was still using an iPhone 6, and you can see I like to take pictures of kids. Here we're in Lima, Peru. This mom was busking on the street, and at first I didn't notice what was in that bundle around her neck, but then you can see what's back there. Later on the same trip, we were along the Amazon River doing a medical mission there. I was taking pictures of kids, clinic work. There's a woman here fishing. There's a little mom being a babysitter. I love the expression on that boy's face. And look at those boots. This girl was watching. She was a little nervous about getting shots and what was going on inside the clinic. On another trip to South America, we were in Quito, Ecuador. And I saw these boys. It looked like they've just gotten out of school and were really excited. I wish I could have introduced them to these 4 girls. It looked like they'd like to meet some young men, but they were halfway around the world in Gdansk, Poland. Here's another trip to South America. We were in Buenos Aires, and I saw these street dancers. In the club, we saw tango dancers. And out on the street, we saw this dog walker. Another time in Ecuador, I saw this shaman on the street practicing some sort of folk medicine, it looks like. One of the best trips I've had was to Peru in 2018 and filled a lifelong dream of visiting Lake Titicaca. This woman lived on a floating island out in the lake, and I couldn't resist getting 2 shots of her. Then we were in Arequipa, Peru, and I saw this interesting llama. Later, I saw this group of llamas, alpacas, and it was a chance to do something a little unusual. In 2019, we got to go to the Galapagos Islands. Here's a few of the critters from there. The blue-footed booby was my favorite. On a trip along the Amazon, we saw this caiman. And this anaconda. Before I got my Sony mirrorless camera, I was working with a zoom lens fixed on a camera and took it to Churchill, Manitoba, and got to take pictures of polar bears. The last trip was to Patagonia. We got to see some glaciers up close and at a distance, icebergs, and then there was this nice warm trip to Cabo. One of the few sunrises I've got. And there's a sunrise at Tellico Village here too. That was from our deck early one morning with an iPhone. Since we haven't been able to travel, I've been trying to figure out what to do with my camera around here. and partly inspired by Dennis Sabo, I've been doing some color nature abstracts. My favorite theme is sunlight on moving water. Now, Susan and I have lived in the village about 5 years now, and it's a great place to live. It's full of interesting people. We've been in lots of interesting places, and so our conversations around the dinner table are often about travel. And I like that.
Hello, my name is Doug Bauman. My wife and I moved here from the Detroit metro area a little over a year ago, where I was a press photographer, photojournalist, a videographer, and a freelance photographer over 40 years. As a photojournalist, I've had the opportunity to photograph many famous individuals and events. I've been in the Oval Office, I've shot prestigious sporting events such as Super Bowls, Final Fours, and many others. While covering the Detroit Pistons and the Los Angeles Lakers in the NBA Finals, I waited about 45 minutes to catch LA Lakers superfan Jack Nicholson standing all by himself while watching the game. This barn near Traverse City, Michigan took a lot of post-production processing, as you can no doubt tell. This was way before Photoshop was even invented. Most of you might think I'm a couple bubbles off level when I say I love winter and all its beauty. This includes days when I couldn't get to work because I was frozen in. I emailed this picture to my editor for that day's page 1. Often I'm sent out to look for interesting photo art, and I get paid for this? Recently I've become enamored with a photo technique called high dynamic range photography, or HDR. This process allows you to capture finite detail in deep shadows and very bright highlights. Today, virtually all landscape photos I take are in HDR. I took this picture at a county water park on one of those hot, sticky, humid days in Michigan. It made it to page 1 of my paper, a promotional brochure for the county park, and won several awards. Newspapers cannot survive without weather art. On an enterprise shoot on a hot day, I came across a group of kids blowing bubbles. Mom said, "Of course you can take his picture for your newspaper." I about jumped out of my skin when I saw this leaf fan lying in my driveway. I captured the image on my photo scanner. No camera was involved. I was my newspaper's go-to photographer for the visit at the Pontiac Silverdome of Pope John Paul II. Close to 90,000 people were in attendance. An award-winning photo. This is Ash Cave, located in Hocking Hills, Ohio. Hundreds of years ago, Native Americans used it for camp and shelter. When discovered in more modern times, the floor of the cave was all ash from the Native American fires, hence the name. This photo was taken at the most northwestern tip of the state of Washington. It's a very desolate and inaccessible area known as Cape Flattery. Because I love early mornings, glorious sunrises, long shadows, and unique light, I started collecting images taken at first light. My paper loved these images and started publishing the photos in a series I named By Dawn's Early Light. This is Mesa Arch in Utah. We drove from Arches National Park to Canyonlands National Park on a dark, moonless night, trying to find an innocuous little parking lot sign that was very difficult to find. Eventually we found it parked in a small parking lot and tried to find a path that led up to the arch, and we could hardly see the hand in front of us. Fortunately, there were some people in front of us that had a flashlight, and we meandered up this little trail, cognizant of rattlesnakes and scorpion, and finally got to this arch. It's not very big, maybe 25, 30 feet from side to side, and there was already at least a half a dozen or a dozen photographers all set up with their tripods. I was able to weasel myself in between several of them, get set up before dawn, and wait for the sunrise. For a very short period of time, the underbelly of this arch glows red, as you can see, and then it disappears. We left our campsite hours before dawn and drove a narrow, hazardous road in order to be in position for sunrise at Crater Lake, Oregon. My wife Sharon and I moved to Tennessee a little over a year ago. We love our new home in Tellico Village and are finding countless photo opportunities in this beautiful state.